It should be good.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another Friday show. If you're new to the show, I'll give you a little rundown on how it goes. Feel free to just ask any questions in the chat, and we're here to answer all your questions. But we're going to go through who each of us are, starting with Michael. Michael, go ahead.
Hey, I'm Michael, technical marketing manager at NETGEAR. As most of you know, I spend a lot of my time playing with beta test products, as well as monitoring a lot of the reviews that are online for the products. And wait 1 second. I just snoozed that, or my computer was going to reboot. And I'm here to answer any questions you got.
Cool. Right. Ben, go ahead.
Hey everybody, I am Ben Acevedo. I'm a digital experience manager, or is it digital? I don't know. My title, digital experience manager. That's what it says right below me. And I work on Nighthawk Pro Gaming, Armor, and Smart Parental Controls. I'm here to answer questions as I can. I'm just excited to that we're back, and that you guys are all here and joining us. And like we said last time, real quick, like 13 of you guys already hit the like. There's 15 of you guys watching. That's just amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much.
Really love the engagement. Means a lot to us. And if you haven't hit the like button, please do. Helps us out a lot. Helps bring more people to the show. But yeah, Darren, go ahead. Introduce yourself.
I'm Darren. I'm a techno support specialist and community moderator at NETGEAR. I answer home networking questions in our forum. So if you have more questions past the day, just hit us up on social media or in our NETGEAR community.
Awesome. And I'm Alec. This is my last day as an interactive media specialist. I'll be switching up a little bit soon. But I basically do design for the website and a little bit on social media, but mostly web design these days. So let's get started. We already got some funny comments here from Kieran, one of our regulars. Kieran, welcome back. Always great to have you here. Hamad, welcome back. Ricky, Kevin, Dan, love to see the returning viewers. But Kieran says, where did it go? He said something about Michael being on the left.
It's hurting his brain that I
was
left.
Michael's usually on the far right, or
I can move him.
Where I am. Because that's Michael's in the Angelo slot right now.
Yeah,
you'd be able to just touch and just swap people around.
Yeah,
I could, but
no, it's great to see all the regulars. We were just talking about this earlier today, and it's just amazing how this show has taken on a life of its own.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah, we've been doing this for over a year now, which has been great, and it's been getting better every time. So yeah, thanks again to everybody who's come back to the show. We really appreciate it. But while we were in the waiting room, we already got some questions coming in, which is great. We're happy to answer those. And if anybody else has any questions, don't hold back. Let us know. We're happy to answer them. But the first question is from Ricky, who says he has a Nighthawk R7960P. It's still having problems. Ethernet slows to a halt and reboots twice a day. This unit is a replacement sent by NETGEAR. The room is 75 or 74 degrees Fahrenheit. The router is 81 degrees Fahrenheit.
Acts up at 80 with fans. Yeah, because my first suspicion was heat.
Mm-hmm.
Because anytime that you get those like weird drop offs,
he means Celsius. I don't know that it'd be acting up at 80 Fahrenheit.
Yeah, no, the Celsius would be boiling.
It's got to be Fahrenheit though, because he said his room is 74 degrees.
Hey, maybe he likes it really warm in the room. You never know.
Yeah,
it's like an oven in there.
Here's an interesting humidity. Would humidity have anything to do with it? I personally run dehumidifiers in my house, especially around my electronics.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, it's possible. It shouldn't have an effect because normally they have a clear sealant over all the components that are on the motherboard specifically for something like that.
Makes sense.
Right.
But if there was any place where any moisture was getting in, then yeah, temperature is going to transfer through that moisture faster and cause a problem. But 80 degrees Fahrenheit, your router shouldn't be having that problem unless it's shoved, inside a box someplace where it's actually getting much hotter than that. So that is definitely not normal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a really weird thing. My initial inclination is to have him write in, and I think that we need to take this offline for him to help him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Because
especially since this
since
was
it's
a
a
replacement
replacement.
for his old one.
Yeah, exactly.
Another thing I might consider, and I don't know if this may have an effect, some sort of like, you know, automatic reboot, but maybe there's an issue with your Ethernet cable. Like, I don't know if it fails, would that ever reboot the router for any reason? If there was some sort of, you know, safety reboot?
It shouldn't. If it's basically, slowing down, and as soon as you do a reboot, everything speeds back up again, then yeah, probably not cabling. But if it's having that problem when it's that hot and all he does is reboot it and then it works fine, then it probably isn't the temperature that's causing it. Because if it was a temperature that was causing it, you'd need to have to let it sit there for a while and cool down before you started it back up. And if it's only happening a couple times a day, chances are it's running at that 80 degrees Fahrenheit in the room for, all day long. So heat may not be the issue with this, or it might be just one of the contributing factors.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning towards it just could be a bad router.
It definitely can be. And if it's like a capacitor that's going out, those usually, even if the temperature goes up, that can cause it to, go off. But then when you reboot it, it's still going to be as hot, and the capacitor has discharged and it'll continue running for a while. So I would guess it probably is a bad component.
Gotcha. Which is unfortunate, especially coming from, a replacement unit.
Yep.
It's really unlucky to have two faulty units in a row. So,
Well, he might have been having the update issue with that model. That's why he needed it replaced. It might have his last one might not have been faulty. That we had an issue with not being able to update the firmware.
Got it. Okay. Well, it sounds like it's that should answer your question. So yeah, definitely let's take this one offline. Email us, and remind us that you're Ricky B from the show, and we'll help you out as quickly as we possibly can. But apologies for not being able to help you on the show. Anyways, moving to the next question. This is from Prem. Apologies if I mispronounced your name. And they ask, I have a Nighthawk RX 45. All the devices are working properly, but my work computer is causing issues. Site can't be reached even though I'm not having any VPN. Tried wire, went vain. Any suggestions? Well, typically, usually I would say this is a VPN issue, but you said that there's no VPN, so that kind of kills my point. I would say, gosh, even if you're hardwiring it, it's not working, huh? I don't know. What would you guys say this could be? It could be like a MAC address issue, maybe.
Or actually a DNS resolution issue.
Right.
When you say that all the other devices are working properly, but your work computer is having problems, and from what it sounds like, it's having problems getting to a particular site, possibly your work address. Is there any other computers that have problems getting to the same site? And if they don't, then it is down to just that one system, your work computer. And it's possibly that there's something on that is stopping it from resolving the name to the IP address. One thing you can try, if another computer works just fine, is open up a command prompt window and ping the URL, and it will that you're trying to go to, and it'll give you the IP address of that URL. Then on your work computer, do the exact same thing, but try to ping that IP address. And you should actually see a name resolution over to the URL when you ping it. If it doesn't resolve, then you're going to end up with a bunch of lines that are basically saying couldn't reach it. And that at least helps narrow it down to it is a DNS issue where it's not actually getting the resolution from the URL name over to the IP address.
Got it.
So that's one possibility. And also make sure your work computer, someone hasn't gone in and hard coded your IP address or your DNS server, especially the DNS server. If it is hard coded in there, then you might want to try changing that DNS server to a different one. And one off the top of my head that I always remember, it's easy, is 8.8.8.8.
Mhm.
You can give that a try. And see whether it's just a DNS resolution that's keeping it from being able to access that other site.
Yeah, I think I use one that's like 1.1.1.1. I'm pretty sure there's like a website where you can like search based off of your zip, like what's the best DNS address. But yeah, there's a lot of
Like
like
a lot of DNS servers
third-party
are
DNS servers
good.
that are really good. Yeah. Cool. Okay. So yeah, give that a shot. Feel free to try it out now and report back to us in the comments. We're going to be here until 1 o'clock Pacific time, which is a little over 45 minutes. So feel free to give that a shot, report back, and we can try to continue helping you out. Okay, cool. So the next question is from Places and Spaces 35, and Places and Spaces 35 is a regular, so welcome back. And they ask, I find my Orbee runs better with QoS enabled, but have a 1 gig down and 30 up subscription. Always thought that with this much speed, QoS is not usually necessary. Well, this is kind of there's a lot to dig into here. So like, just because you have a fast internet subscription doesn't necessarily mean that you're gonna, have more bandwidth. You're still gonna be limited by, too many devices congesting your network. That being said, if you have higher speed, the bandwidth is it's kind of gonna carry a bit more weight, if you will. But I would say if you got a lot of devices and maybe you're gaming, I would still use QoS. It's definitely worth, if you're online gaming, it's really important to have a good connection. So I would definitely still use it. Anything to add there?
Yeah, I would use the QoS mainly because it's quality of service. What it's doing is it's routing. It's doing the routing of your information. And if you have multiple things going, granted that its job is a little bit easier because you've got a bigger bandwidth.
Mhm.
It still doesn't mean that there isn't things that are competing for that bandwidth. Especially if you're running 4K, multiple 4K movies, that chokes up a lot of
Totally.
of bandwidth. So I would still enable it. I can't think of a reason why I wouldn't.
Totally. Yeah. I also personally suggest, if you can hardwire your media center or your televisions, or any streaming devices, definitely do that. You don't really need more than 40 megabytes per second to stream 4K at 60 FPS, I believe, even at the highest, video codec. You don't need crazy speed. So, hardwiring and getting that consistent signal versus like a over the air, potentially choppy signals, is better, even at slower speeds. And it's going to take those devices off of your network. So kind of going on a tangent here, but that's probably one of my strongest opinions, is like hardwire all of your streaming devices. Really, really good for your network. Okay, let's see. Trying to
There's a
follow along
follow-up
here.
from Ricky B.
Mm-hmm.
He's just asking if it's a bad router, since this is the second one. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a bad router. It's just, they're manufactured devices, and as much as we try to quality control everything as best as we can, they are manufactured devices, and they are subject to some slight errors, and unfortunately you drew a bad hand on both of those, and but I wouldn't necessarily say it's a bad router.
Mm-hmm.
And getting bad components in something when you're doing mass production is a common problem, because I know, for instance, for every resistor that's in there, usually the resistors are quickly tested by a system to figure out exactly what the resistance is with a plus or minus threshold, but it's only a quick test. And if a resistor is bad or going to go bad, that first test might be fine. But then when it actually ends up in a system with use, it starts having problems. It's mainly because of batch manufacturing. When you manufacture, 1 million capacitors, there's a chance that some of them will fail on its first test, but there are going to be some that actually make it through the QA process, but in real use over time, they start having problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, so kind of unlucky on that one, but like we said, email us. We'll take care of that one directly. That's a bit more of a
yeah. We definitely want to take care of that.
Yeah.
It may be your lucky day in being so unlucky. How's that? So
Totally. Okay, question from Hamad here. When you have a Wi-Fi connection extender linked to your router, what Wi-Fi band is used? This is a great question. There's two scenarios. There's the tri-band scenario and the dual band scenario. Mesh networks are really, moving towards tri-band technology. And I think, if you're going to be buying an extender in 2021, it's probably going to be, a tri-band mesh extender. In that case, you're going to have a dedicated 5 gigahertz band communicating between your router and your extender. Now, in the past, you've had the dual band, extenders where there's no dedicated band, so it's going to share the 5 gigahertz band with whatever devices are connecting to the extender. So, does it use the 2.4 at all in the dual band extenders?
Yes.
Okay, so it shows both.
Yeah,
Okay.
With the dual band extenders, it does an interesting trick where it actually switches between the 2.4 and 5 as its backhaul, depending on which one's being used at the time. And of course, which one actually has a connection. If you're too far out, it's going to be forced to only use the 2.4. But it switches back and forth. It doesn't dedicate one or the other to the backhaul. It's just whichever one is being used less at that time, it's going to use as the backhaul.
Got it.
As
Okay,
opposed
that
to
makes
the
sense.
tri-band, where you've got one dedicated band that's constantly being used, and then the other two are always, used by clients.
Right. We had I did a little diagram a couple months back on Photoshop. It was quite bad, but it explained the whole thing. So if you want to go back and find that in one of the videos, there is a nice illustration. Or I shouldn't say it's
Did it
nice.
have little stick figures?
No, but it had like little eggs for Orbees.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I just kind of made circles and lines. It was quite bad. Okay. Question here from Jasek. Apologies if I mispronounced your name. And they ask, I have a NETGEAR Nighthawk RIX 120. Love the router, but is there a way to always enable the fan in the router? I'm not sure that unit. Does that unit have a fan in the router?
It probably does. I'd have to pull out mine to check and see. But it's interesting asking that question because 99% of the people out there or more want fans turned off and not turned on because of the noise.
Right.
The answer would be no. The fan should be a variable fan that when it's needed to be on, it'll be on. When it doesn't actually need to be on, then it's not going to be spinning up. But I'd be interested in finding out why you want to be able to turn the fan on all the time, as opposed to let it decide when it needs to come on. Because most people don't like the fan noises.
Right. Yeah, and most home networking hardware, when you get into the more business hardware, that gets a little more intense. There's a lot of cooling involved. But on most of the home networking hardware, it's passively cooled. So fans are really only needed in extreme cases where, you've got a bunch of devices using a lot of bandwidth. So, I wouldn't worry about it too much. It's designed that way intentionally. So, but if you wanted to do, the fan on at all times, maybe you could like open it up and unplug the header and like plug it into a power supply. Could do that. If you
just put it on top of a toaster. It'll keep it warm enough. The fan will always go.
You could always do that. But if you decide to hack it yourself, send us some photos. We'd love to see it. Kieran asks, is there any way to disable 160 megahertz on the XR1000 just to avoid my second AP overlapping in the frequencies? Oh man, I would say that's probably not.
Yeah, I'm gonna decide on probably a not on that one.
That's really in depth. Great idea. To optimize your network in that way, but we'd have to get some
I don't
engineers
think it's
involved with that
possible
one.
Yeah, I just don't think it's possible at this point in time.
Yeah, sorry about that. A question from Adolf here, who says, please, is it advisable to connect L3/L2 switch to the RAX 11,000, the switch handling the VLAN tasks, the RAX 11,000 handling internet routing? Okay, I think I might have misread that a little bit, but is it advisable? I mean, if it suits your use case, then I would say yes. Are there any alternatives that anybody would suggest to that setup?
Well, actually, I think that setup is good if he's working with VLANs, because the L2, L3 switch is more designed for handling switching and VLANs than any router is going to be. And so if you're using a lot of VLANs, yeah, I would set it so your layer 2-3 switch is doing the VLAN tasking. So basically handling everything inside of your network, and then letting your racks 11,000 handle all the internet routing. Sure, that makes complete sense. In fact, think of it kind of the same way that your router handles all the stuff inside and your modem handles your connection out to the internet. Cool. So you're making it slightly more dedicated. Plus, it means the other functionality on the RAX 1100 besides VLANing, you can still use, and it'll use all the processing power for that instead of also having to handle the VLAN traffic.
So sounds like it's a good move.
Sure.
Could be a great move.
Use VLANs, I would suggest it.
All right, good stuff. If you do decide to go with that setup, let us know how it works for you. We'd be interested to hear it, and send us some pictures. We should ask for pictures more often, guys. Send us pictures of your routers. We want to see all the cool router setups. Send them to our email. Get some. Maybe what we should do? We should do a router highlight. Have people send in their router setups. We could do like a little highlight reel. Just an idea. All right.
And since you're talking about routers, I might as well just show up. Here is the E500.
Oh, can you RAX
E500. Oh, sure. Oh, let me flip that back up. There you go.
Cool.
Yeah, and that is the 6E router.
Our very first Wi-Fi 6E.
Yep.
Unit has
the 6. Wants to see the back of it, you can see the back too. And I like there's actually a switch on the back to turn off the LEDs.
I use that on my XR1000 or 500. Yep. I wish it was an XR1000. But while we're talking about that new product, it's a big launch for us. It's the first Wi-Fi 6E router we've got. We're really excited about it. Do you want to maybe just go and just touch on briefly, Michael, like what is Wi-Fi 6E? What are the benefits? Really what separates it from Wi-Fi 6?
Okay, yeah, the 6E opens up the 6 gigahertz band so that if you have a device that one of the newest ones out there, Samsung, I believe, has one out that now has it, and I'm assuming Apple does because they usually come out with that. And it basically opening up a whole new lane of traffic at 6 gigahertz speeds. And I can tell you that our CEO put one of those in one of his homes and tested it out. And he put up a little article internally saying he absolutely loved it. The speeds he was getting through on his 6E phone were just phenomenal. And that's the biggest thing with it is it's basically giving you more traffic lanes, and currently a traffic lane that is not occupied by many devices, which means it's like going down a highway on a Sunday morning when everyone is in church and you're the only one on the road.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, I just think it's important for us to share that, with everybody here joining us, so you kind of have an idea of like what's new in the technology, because we're trying to keep up as best as we can, and I think we do a good job.
We're usually on the cutting edge of new technologies when they come out. Whenever possible, we try to be the first to market with any of the products.
Exactly. Good stuff. All good stuff. All right, question here from Razor. Razor 2048, great game, by the way. If you're ever bored in the airport. GRC has a good DNS benchmark tool. Oh, this is more of a comment.
Yeah.
That will try a large number of them and measure response time. That is good to know. GRC, I'm going to write that down. I'm going to do that myself. I might switch my DNS address. Cool. Well, thank you for that, Razor. Maybe we'll suggest that to people whenever they need some help. All right. Question here from Gonzalo.
Actually, Hamad asked about the 6 gigahertz with a question mark.
Oh.
And that was what we were just talking about, is the 6E. That it's right now, people are used to having 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz bands to work with. Well, now they've opened it up so that the 6 gigahertz range is open to start using. And that's where our RAX E500 comes in. It's the first router that we have out there that can actually use the 6 gigahertz band. So any clients that come out that also can use the 6 gigahertz band, they can use that instead of being on the 5 and the 2.4, which is fairly congested right now.
Yeah. So that's really just one of the biggest, the biggest new thing in Wi-Fi 6E is that extra band, that new band. Sorry to skip your question, Hamad. But anyways, a question from Gonzalo, and I think this is Gonzalo. I think this is a really good question. We get asked this a lot in one form or another. And the question is, how can users avoid the 5 gigahertz interface? And the easy fix is you can separate your SSID into 2 separate SSIDs. You can have a 5 gigahertz SSID and a 2.4 gigahertz SSID, and then you can connect all your devices just to the 2.4. I would say that's not advisable. Correct me if I'm wrong, or maybe you can go ahead and share your use case, but I don't really know any use cases where you wouldn't want to connect to the 5 gigahertz band. Maybe if you're separating IoT devices and, your cell phone and your Mac and your PC, you're trying to have them on 2 different bands, but I really don't see too much of a reason to completely remove the 5 gigahertz band from your network. But hey, prove me wrong. I'm curious to hear what your use case is.
And well, also, I think he just means if you're 5 gigahertz, if there's a lot of interference on it, how do you avoid that? And 404 Fans Villa gave a good recommendation, changing it to channel 161 or channel 48. Also, download a Wi-Fi analyzer on your phone, and then take a look at it and see which one of the channels on the 5 gigahertz band is being used more or less than others. And you want to go and set it to a channel that isn't being used a lot. And the Wi-Fi analyzers just give sort of a bar graph, so you can see which one's the lowest, and you can go into your router and set it to that particular channel. The only downside to that is that's just a single instant check that you're doing there. But an hour from now, that channel could be heavily impacted depending on what the devices around you are doing that are clogging up the 5 gigahertz. So it's usually just setting it on auto is the best if you've got a lot of interference, because it will at various times move everything over to a different channel because that channel was getting too congested. And so you kind of let the router do the thinking for you. But if there is a channel that's rarely used in the area that you're in, you can go over and you can hard code that to only use that one channel. And hopefully not everyone else jumps into that channel and starts clogging it up.
Gotcha. I'm realizing now as Michael answers the question, I completely misread it. So please ignore everything I just said. I'm so sorry. Totally misread the question.
That's okay. I had a math problem in one of my calculus classes that I completely misread. And the answer was completely wrong. But I took it back up to the instructor and said, well, this is what I thought you were asking. He went through the entire thing and he said, well, your answer's right, if that's what I meant. And he gave me full credit on it anyway. So it never hurts.
Well, if you're ever curious for use cases of splitting the bands. I hope that, gave you some information, but listen to Michael. All right. Trying to follow along here where we are. Looks
Yeah, I'm
like
trying to
we
figure out.
have a question from Prem. I also have 2 Orbee voices in the same network. Any feature to link these 2 satellites that I can, so that I can play the same music in. Sorry, one second. I have somebody at the door. Does somebody want to take the question?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Prem is basically asking, he's got a couple of Orbee voices. Is there any way that he can do the multi-room music so it'll play the same music on both the satellites at the same time? And unfortunately, that isn't a feature that's supported on the Orbee voice. I know it's supported on a lot of the Alexa devices, but the Orbee voice, that isn't one of the features that they have on it. But it has been asked for quite a lot, because I've seen this over the years while the Orbee voice has been out.
Cool. Thank you for jumping on that, Michael. Okay. Okay, so we have a follow-up question from Jasek, who's asking, basically, why can't he achieve 1 gigabit speeds on his iPhone standing right next to the router? Well, there's a lot of reasons why that could be. One reason that I think a lot of people kind of misunderstand is the optimal spot to be is actually not right next to the router. The broadcasting of the signal from the router is in a donut shape. It's very interesting. Somebody actually told this to us on the show. So this is some information from fellow viewers, which is great. But yeah, the optimal spot's actually about 5 feet away. So if you're standing right next to the router, might not be getting that best speed. Secondly, oftentimes it's really hard to truly get 1 gigabit speed. You might have a 1 gigabit subscription, but it's really hard to actually get full 1 gigabit speed. So if you're getting like 950 megabytes per second, that's probably about as good as you're going to be able to get.
Also, a couple of additional things that I can add is one of the things when you're running the speed test is test with the Nighthawk app speed test. And that will actually be testing the full speed from the internet to your router, not to your client device. Mm-hmm. So it kind of narrows things down, and you can find out what is your RAX 120 actually getting from the internet. And that's sort of the benchmark to start with, because if it's only getting 800 from the internet, then any wireless device connected to it's never going to get any more than 800 anyway, because that's the maximum speed that it's seeing. Mm-hmm. So first find out what your maximum speed is from the router. Then from your client device, run something like speedtest.net on it. Mm-hmm. And test your speed, and make sure that the server that you have selected within that program is one that probably has the biggest pipe. Your ISP is usually the best one to choose. Like if you have Comcast, try to find Comcast as one of those, or at least a large provider that's close to you. And that helps maximize it. Also make sure there's nothing else running on your network that's hogging up your internet bandwidth. On your iPhone, make sure that you're on your 5 gigahertz channel. Do as many things as you can to then be able to see what is the maximum speed you can get. And knowing the difference in those numbers to start with will help, because if from the router itself you're getting, say, 900 megabits, and then on your iPhone you're only getting 100, then that's definitely something that needs to be looked into, because you should be getting a lot more than that.
Right, definitely. Yeah, there's a lot of these factors.
Yeah, you're never really going to get perfect speeds on Wi-Fi unless you're in a perfect sealed bubble scenario of testing Wi-Fi.
Yeah, like
which we happen to have a chamber at work where you can do that.
We do actually have a chamber that is a perfect space.
It looks kind of like a mini cargo container with a door on the side you step in. The walls have all these little spiky foam things coming out. And once you close that door, you're the only one in there and nothing goes in or out.
It's actually, I went in there once. It's kind of cool.
Yeah,
It's like a study
kind of
pod.
claustrophobic
Kinda.
though once it closes. I mean, you can even
Yeah,
feel it in your ears that you are sealed.
yeah, no joke. Okay, let's see here. Let us see. Where are we? Um, Jasek is asking what the email is. Christian, if you could go ahead and just paste that email in the chat for him so
Yeah.
he can copy it over to his
Yeah.
email.
And include hashtag stay connected in it, so that that's an easy way for us to search to find ones that are specifically from this show.
We do prioritize emails from our viewers, so you're getting the best of the best. Cool. Let's see, where are we? Okay, question here from Kieran for Michael. He says, Michael, do you not have two of those routers and put one in bridge mode?
I only have one of those routers right now, so nope, can't do it in bridge mode. But I have a lot of other routers I could put into bridge mode with it. But I basically cycle through my routers. Actually, the router that's running the house right now is an R9000, and I've had that for a long time. The router that I'm talking through right now is actually the XR1000. And my plan this weekend is, now that I work with the XR1000 every single day and made sure that it's nice and rock solid, that's going to migrate in. The 9000 is going to be decommissioned, and then the E500 is then going to become my desktop router for a while, so I can work through the bugs, and make sure that it's rock solid. So things slowly cycle through in the household.
As you're answering that question, Michael, I was thinking to myself, Michael might be the one person on Earth that owns the most routers. He might be it.
I take ones back to my lab at work when I have too many of them stacked up behind me. And working from home with COVID, I've got a bunch of hardware stacked up behind me that I've got to migrate back to work. It's like, I'm done with this. It's taking up too much room.
That still counts.
Where you showed the Michael's garage sale.
Right, that's true.
I'm surprised that you're not glowing, like literally glowing from the amount of.
I think the green screen behind me is hiding the glow.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
You can fake anything.
Wi-Fi won't make you glow. That is not an official Netgear suggestion.
I don't know. I say circle yourself with a bunch of routers, turn them all on, sit there for a few hours. I think there'll be a little glow off.
Little glowing.
Little glow.
Oh, I hope not. We'll have some issues with the government if that happens. We'll get sued. Okay, let's see. Okay, question here from Moody. These are the kind of questions we love to answer. Moody asks, I have 200 megabytes per second fiber internet. What is the best mesh Wi-Fi system I can get? So Moody, there's two things you're gonna want to consider. One, that it can handle 200 megabytes per second. The good news for you there is that pretty much everything we produce is rated for at least 200 megabytes per second. So you shouldn't have any issue with basically anything you buy from Netgear in that regard. Now, the second thing to consider is how much square feet you need to cover. If you have a massive home with like 7,000 square feet, you might need 3-4 satellites. In that case, you're going to want to get a kit that can support that. And if you go on our website, all of our different product pages for mesh systems are going to tell you how much square feet they cover. So keep that in mind. And then, does anybody want to kind of explain the difference between Orbee and Nighthawk? Because I think I'm a bad advocate for those two.
Sure, I can do that, but I wanted to add one additional thing in there, is that because you're using fiber, one, you don't want to get any of ours that have a cable connection into it,
Great point.
or have a modem in it, because none of our products actually have direct fiber connections, which means that you're going to have to get a fiber modem from your ISP, and then you're wiring in whatever you have to that. Good news there is that every product we make, its WAN port is at least a gig WAN port. So the minimum limit on the ports is going to be the 1 gig port. We have some of them that are multi-gig, but that way, with a 200 megabit fiber connection, any of them are going to be able to easily handle that. Difference between our Nighthawk mesh as opposed to our Orbee is that Orbee is designed specifically around being a mesh system. And almost all of the Orbees have tri-band. Some of them are dual band, but most of them are tri-band, which means they actually have a dedicated backhaul for all of the devices, all of the satellites and the Orbee router to be able to talk to each other and use that backhaul only for their communications. So no clients are actually going in and hogging that up.
Mhm.
And what that means is that you get maximum throughput at all times. With the Nighthawk mesh, it's sort of a hybrid design where it does the mesh, but it doesn't have a dedicated backhaul to it.
Right.
It uses the 2.4 and the 5 gigahertz bands as its backhaul, and it switches between them. Whichever one has the less load on it, it'll switch over to that to use its backhaul, which means it's not specifically designed, for the mesh backhaul. It's kind of a hybrid design that can do mesh. But with the Nighthawk mesh, if you happen to be someone that doesn't really want the mesh as much, and you want to be able to split your 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, with Nighthawk mesh, you have the option. You can go with the mesh portion, or you can tell it to split into 2 separate bands. So if you have IoT devices like cameras that you only want to connect to the 2.4, you can do that on that system. You can't do that on the Orbee system. It's mesh all the time, and it has a single SSID and password that you connect to, which for most people's uses is fine, but there are some IoT devices that have problems with it because they always want to be connected to a 2.4, but they're not really smart enough to send the right information to it all the time. To stay on the 2.4, it can have problems.
Yeah, and that is kind of to say, to boil down what Michael is saying is it really kind of depends what kind of user you are as well. Do you want the Orbee system where it's very much set it and forget it, easy setup, really simple, clean app, or do you want kind of the more in-depth one where you can tinker with these settings like Michael just mentioned for your IoT devices and stuff like that? So a lot of it, aside from maybe needing those specific use cases that Michael just mentioned, who are you? What are you looking for in your system? Sometimes we make the Android versus iPhone comparison.
I was going to say, not to diss anyone, but it's like, Apple, Android. Do you want easy, or do you want to be able to get in there and fiddle with things?
Yeah. So that should help your consideration, but let us know if you have any more specific questions, geared for your setup. All right, we have Ben's favorite question here. This one's from Curtis, and Curtis asks, "Hi all, any news on the Duma OS 3 for the XR500?"
Yep. And that news is we still have a bottleneck in the QA. So it is coming soon as an official, but the beta version that's out there is pretty close to the official version.
Cool. So hopefully that helps you out. But yeah, download the beta. It's a cool beta. It's more stable than you think it might be.
It's pretty stable.
It's pretty stable, yeah.
I would download it and give it a go.
Question from Kieran here. Trying to figure out how I can force my Mac to always connect to 5 gigahertz at work. It's so much faster. Well, if it's not your network, I mean, my gut reaction is like just split the SSIDs. But if it's not your network, if it's the work network, maybe send an email to your boss and be like, "Hey, can we split the network?"
Well, if the network's actually split, then all you have to do is tell it to forget the 2.4 gigahertz on your laptop, and then it won't use it because it thinks you've never been connected to that, and it'll only connect up to the 5. But I'm guessing your work has merged the two of them, since you're saying you're trying to force it onto the 5 gigahertz, in which case, yeah, there's not a lot you can do on the client side. That's all pretty much handled on the server side and the administration.
Yeah. So hopefully that helps out a little bit. Cool. We have a funny little comment from Kieran. Kieran says, "I would love a speed more than 50 megabytes per second. Welcome to the UK." Yeah, the UK, not the best internet infrastructure, but it's getting better. So hopefully one day we'll have that gigabit internet in all of Europe, even in the castles and stuff.
Elon Musk's Starlink, but looking at the speeds that they're getting right now, 50 is about the max that they're getting. In the future, he's promising that it's going to go up much higher than that. But for now, it sounds like you're getting as fast as anything else that someone has out there.
Yeah, at least you can do QoS with your XR1000 that you won. So hopefully that helps a little bit with the, you know,
Yeah, that should definitely help. I think that the Duma software really helps sub 200 in speed. It really makes
Yes.
a huge difference.
absolutely. And I think, Kieran, for you especially, knowing that you've got kind of not as much speed to play with, I'm a broken record. I always make the suggestion, hardwire whatever you can hardwire so that it's not spread
Yep.
too thin, Cool. So, we have a new viewer here, I believe, Peter. He says hi from Sweden. Thanks for tuning in. I hope it's not too late there. Does NETGEAR have any consumer/prosumer product with IPS/IDS? I don't know what that is, so I will let one of you guys answer that.
I must have missed that question. I wanted to read over it again. So someone else jump in.
Intrusion detection and intrusion prevention. Netgear Armor.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a service that you can add to certain routers, and it'll protect you on those kind of threats and more.
There you go. Yeah, good answer. Cool. So next question here is from. I think we're actually all caught up.
I'm seeing some other questions in there that it looked like we didn't hit. Places and Spaces asking about it. Is it worth enabling DFS channels? And then there's some other questions below that.
Yeah.
Did I miss a couple?
Yeah. Well,
it looks like I missed a couple. Okay, my bad.
That's okay. I'll answer Places
down.
and Spaces. Is it worth enabling the DFS channels? If you have clients that can use the DFS channels, then yeah, it doesn't hurt to turn that on. But if you do happen to live near things like military bases, really close to airports and so on, your router's probably going to kick you off those channels anyway and drop you down to the lower channels, because if they do recognize that there's some interference with places like airports, military bases, part of the coding that they had to put in there to be able to use those channels is they have to voluntarily drop off the channels if those channels are being used. So can't hurt to turn it on. It will drop off the channels if it turns out that you are too close to places like military bases or airports, or even some hospitals.
Cool. Thanks for catching that one. I missed this whole chunk of questions. I'm sorry, guys.
Sometimes the live chat jumps up and down.
Yeah, I know.
It's hard to find your way back.
I think I hit the green or the blue arrow that like jumped me down to the bottom.
Yep.
So I think I skipped a couple. But yeah. Next question here is from Dan Tuma. Dan asks, is there a way to check the cable modem for speed? I have a CM 1200.
And the answer is yes. If you want to bypass your router so you can find out what is the raw speed that's coming down to your CM 1200, then what you do is plug a laptop directly into your CM 1200. And this is just for a test, because of course you have to plug your router back in again. But plug a laptop directly into your CM 1200, power off the CM 1200, bring it back up again. You may have to reboot your laptop because the CM 1200 needs to get the MAC address of the device that's connected directly to it. Then once you're connected to that, then you can run a speed test, and that'll tell you what speed are you getting from the laptop straight through the CM 1200 out to the internet.
I didn't know that. That's really cool. I didn't even know you could do that. Cool. Moody asks, is there any Orbee mesh system that supports Wi-Fi 6E? Not currently. Sounds like something we would probably do though, so give it some time.
Yes. and that answers Lawrence's question, which is when are we getting an Orbee with Wi-Fi 6E? I think the best answer that we could say is keep your eyes peeled.
Yeah.
We can either confirm nor deny.
There you go.
But it sounds like something that we would do. I mean, there isn't a reason why we wouldn't.
And we always move towards the latest and greatest when it comes to protocols and things like that. So yeah, I expect to see Wi-Fi 6E starting to migrate into a lot of devices as we come out with newer products.
Yeah.
Cool. So the next question is for Darren, and they're asking which mesh system is best, the RBR 850 or the Plume mesh system?
I'd have to go with the Orbee because I've never heard of the second one.
Yeah, Orbee really is top of the line. Not only within our product line, but really in the whole home networking field. I mean, if you go look at reviews and stuff, it might not always win the overall review because it is pricier, but when it comes to raw performance, Orbee's the best in the business.
And I did actually jump over and look at the Plume SuperPods. And if I was buying this and not even being a NETGEAR employee, but just knowing, networking more and some of the little idiosyncrasies you run across, the RBR 850 most likely will give you much better performance and better range, partially because bigger often is better, and they're much larger units, which means they've got bigger antennas than the Plume has. And looking at the Plumes, they look like they're wall plugs, which means that they're fairly small. You're plugging them into a wall socket, which is down near the ground. So they're going to be hitting a lot of things like couches, chairs, table legs, etc. So you're probably not going to get as good a performance, even because of the location where you have to plug them in.
Yeah, and it looks very similar to the Xfinity solution, which makes me think that Plume may be white labeling. But it looks very similar to Xfinity's plugins.
Interesting.
And
So
I did see that Karen said all those routers and you're not dead yet. Oops, my tinfoil hat came out. Well, Karen, I don't exist. I'm actually just an AI construct. Haven't you seen what they can do with AI these days and the new software that's coming out? It's amazing.
he has a randomly generated joke on his shirt every
That's
show.
right.
Yep.
Every
He can also grow facial hair at will.
That's true. I did last time and it's gone this time.
let's see. There's another question I saw. And a question about the BR200. Why don't you make a version with fiber or ATM interface to avoid the issue with the internet providers? Currently we can't. Like, it's all that technology is wrapped up with the ISPs.
And actually the answer right there was because for us to have anything that is a fiber device for the provider, it has to be certified by that provider. Yeah. And the providers don't want to do that right now. They want to have complete control of their fiber modems. So if they opened that up, we probably would come out with something. But right now, since we have to go through their certification, they control the keys to the kingdom.
Yep.
We've got an awesome question. Well, actually, sorry, I don't want to skip anybody here. Husky Gamer asks, does NETGEAR system work away from town? Which NETGEAR router works far from town? So if you're living in a rural area, this is actually a segment that we're fairly new to, but we're really enthusiastic about at NETGEAR. We're doing a lot of LTE products, and I think we can kind of double up on answering questions here because Hamad asked a similar question about LTE routers. Basically, the typical Wi-Fi setup is you have a modem that's taking internet that is provided by an internet service provider, and that's going to be providing the actual internet for your router. We've been creating some new products where you're actually getting internet from cellular providers. So, you got your AT&Ts, your T-Mobiles, your Sprints, that kind of thing. I don't think Sprint exists anymore, but that is actually going to be kind of providing your Wi-Fi. And in a lot of cases where you're in a rural area where you might not even have internet service providers or they're way overpriced, you can use an LTE system. So I would encourage you, and Christian, if you can link maybe the LTE category from our website for Husky Gamer and Hamad, that'd be great. So they can check out those products. But so that kind of answers Husky's question. Does anybody want to answer kind of Hamad's use case here?
Well, actually, that fits very much into like our LBR20, which is the router that has the failover into the cellular when your broadband goes down. And so we do have a product like that already that is specifically designed for areas where your broadband, can fail, and you still need to have an internet connection. In fact, where I live, when our power goes out, Comcast will be on for a very short period of time. Then the batteries that they have for their towers go out, and then my internet goes out. And so I need to have a cellular fallback that I can go to when that happens.
We don't have a Nighthawk anymore with that. We used to have a 7000 series that was failover, but I don't know if we're still selling that.
I don't think so. I haven't seen it in such a long time.
No, unfortunately not. I don't believe so. All right, here. Let's see. Guys, we're getting down to the last couple minutes of the show, so we're going to just rapid fire these last questions, and apologies if we don't reach the question. Feel free to come back next week. And thank you, Christian, for linking that category. Cool. So, question here from Prem. Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, he mentioned that he's still having problems, and he has tried assigning a static DNS. Prem, I'd recommend that you reach out to us at the NETGEAR team at netgear.com, hashtag stay connected, which should be in the thread farther up that was already posted. And then someone can look into it a little bit more because we do need a little bit more information as to, what site you're trying to get to, if any other computers can get to it, and it's just your work computer, and trying to nail down what it is about your work computer that's keeping you to get to that one site. And if there's any other sites that you can't get to, or it's just that particular site.
Totally. Cool. We got a awesome question from Moody regarding Smart Connect. Basically asking, how does the Orbee know when to assign your client device to 2.4 or 5 gigahertz? There's some math in there. You got some algorithms that's picking the best signal for you. So if you want to do it manually, feel free to split up the SSID into 2 different bands. But if you trust the NETGEAR engineers, we've got some great engineers.
You can't do that on Orbee.
Right, you can't do that on Orbee.
Can't
you can
split
do
it.
that on
only
Orbee.
on the Nighthawk.
Only on Nighthawk.
Yeah.
Well,
and there is actually, I can answer this question. As Alex said, there is a lot of math in the background, but there's some key factors that they have to look at. One of them is signal strength, because it can tell the signal strength between the client device and the router or the satellite. So that's one of the first things it has to look at, is which bands are the best ones that it can connect with. Then balancing out the speed of the 2.4 and the farther range with a 5 gigahertz faster range but shorter, it then says, okay, which one of these would be better for the client, and which band can the client? If it can connect to both of them, it's going to look and say, let's first look at the 5 gigahertz. What sort of signal do we have there? Is it good enough compared to the 2.4? If it's not, then it's going to decide on the 2.4. Otherwise, it'll try to put them on the 5. But it really is testing the signal strength between and saying, what's going to give you the best speed with the signals that you have. And it might put you on the 2.4 because you just have such a strong signal from it. While the 5 gigahertz, you might still be able to connect, but you've got such a poor signal, you're not going to get the throughput. So it can figure it out just testing signal strength, sending a couple packets through, see how long they take, and then it'll say, okay, this guy has to go on 2.4 or 5. As long as the client can do one or the other. Otherwise, it's going to say, the client's going to say, I can only do 2.4, and it's going to say, okay, then we should put you on the 2.4.
I think that is the last question.
I think that wraps it up for today.
Quick last question here from Hamad. Any improvements to the Duma OS 3 software, like user accessibility features?
There is some changes coming up, but like I said, we're trying to get them through a little bit of a QA bottleneck. So, but be advised, there are things coming.
Cool. All right, and we're gonna end it there. That was the last question. If we missed your question, apologies. We had a really awesome active chat today, so we didn't really have any didn't have to have any
Great
filler
show.
content
Didn't have to
today.
do any fillers.
So, but if we did miss your question, please do come back next Friday. We'll be here, same time, same place, and we'll be sure to answer whatever we missed. But until then, thank you all for tuning in. Thank you so much for the engagement and for all the likes and views and comments. We always appreciate it. Any other closing words here from anybody?
No, just have a great weekend.
And for those
stay
who
safe.
practice Easter, enjoy Easter.
Enjoy
Yeah.
Easter. That's right. All right. We'll end it there. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care.